Space Marines, the ordained angels of death, genetically modified humans blessed by the Emperor and given the task of conquering the galaxy, with only about 1 million active. Even with their reduced numbers and having to ration equipment, they are still the most effective fighting force the galaxy has ever seen. And we're here to show you how to kill them, listing out both their strengths and their weaknesses, to give you a decent game plan on how to take down Space Marines both solo and in a group. All this so that someday other races can be lore relevant.
First off on our itinerary, we have the biological flaws of the Astartes, as there are many organs and other accessories that have been stuffed into the human form. They still have the basic weaknesses all creatures have despite having 3 lungs and 2 hearts. Things like their throats are very notable weak spots. In fact, humans have killed Space Marines with spears by targeting this spot. So, despite their enhanced breathing capabilities and blood circulation, you can still easily take one out.
In 2 cases, there are 2 separate organs that, in a certain circumstance, can lead to the death of a Space Marine. Those 2 being the olithic kidney and the hemostemicin. Starting with the olithic kidney, ideally its job is to filter poison out of the body at an incredibly fast rate, but there is a drawback. The organ, to do that, will attempt to put the Space Marine to sleep. This will lower the Astartes' fighting and reasoning ability, which can be dangerous in the middle of a fight, since it increases the chances of a Space Marine slipping up.
Up next, the hemostamen organ, that provides the Space Marine extra nutrients and oxygen flow through the blood. This allows them to breathe easier even in toxic environments and lowers how much food they need to sustain themselves. However, one main drawback is that they're rather bright blood. It's not directly said in any lore, the only thing we know is that it is in fact many shades brighter than regular human blood, possibly being luminescent. Either way, even given their enhanced abilities and tactical minds, in some ways they're easier attracted than typical human, since they have an especially hard time hiding their bright blood. To be fair, this isn't a massive flaw since Space Marines don't bleed very often due to their additional organs clotting the wound quickly. So if you hit them with something, be it a sword or bullet, and they're letting out a massive amount of blood, they're probably dead anyways.
Even though Astartes are one of the most effective soldiers you can have on a battlefield, the enemies of humanity over the last 10,000 years have developed different strategies to chip away at their strengths. One of the best examples of this being the Swarm Lord, a unit of Tyranids specifically made to both command his insect brethren, and when he's on the battlefield challenge other commander units to fight and die against him in battle. If the Swarm Lord dies, he'll simply respawn, smarter and stronger. If the Swarm Lord wins, it'll be a crushing blow to the enemy faction. This strategy has been extremely successful in some cases and mediocre in others. In some cases leading to the death of a war boss, and in other cases almost leading to the death of Chapter Master Calgar of the Ultramarines. It almost has also led to the death of Commander Dante of the Blood Angels. So overall, this proves that if you have a target that can become a big enough threat, you can lure high-ranking Space Marines into a no-win or high-risk scenario. Now, as to why they do this, it seems to be a psychological flaw, but just like any flaw, it can be abused.
Moving on to their equipment of the Space Marines, there's 3 main flaws in their armor that can be used against them. First off, an obvious one that doesn't get brought up often, is their weight. Sometimes weighing well over a ton, Space Marines can have trouble maneuvering over types of terrain, ranging from deep mud to most civilian buildings, especially buildings that have not been maintained. A Space Marine in the wrong spot can be trapped in deep holes or near immobilized in deep mud or similar terrain. Do keep in mind this does depend on type of armor. In their typical armor they can climb, but in Terminator armor not so much.
Moving on to the second flaw, we have EMPs. The Space Marines' power armor involves an exosuit powered by a power pack, which sits on their back. In multiple cases, high-yield EMPs have disabled these power packs, and therefore made them nearly immobilized in their armor, making them practically unable to fight back. Also, good luck EMPing Space Marines without EMPing your own units, but destroying the power packs or energy cables with firearms or explosives will have the same effect.
And the last flaw of their equipment is something that even a child can abuse. Your average Space Marine has one major flaw in their helmet, specifically their visor. They can't wipe it. So if any blood or dirt gets on their visor, there's not much they can do but take off their helmet, which opens them up to getting headshot.
Looking further into the Space Marine psyche, we'll be targeting a few weaknesses, their predictable tactics and their need for honor. On to the predictable tactics. Each Space Marine group specializes in a handful of things. Even if they're all genius super warriors, they mostly rely on the same strategy and hope it works. Depending on the Legion, if you know their doctrine, you'll know what they use and how they react. A good example being the White Scars, a Legion made up jet bike riding Mongolian Space Marines that try to outflank you with their impressive speed and mobility. If you're smart enough to identify what Space Marine chapter they are, though, countering them will be made much easier, since it's really hard to flank an enemy that knows you're trying to flank them.
A few more examples highlighting flaws with their psychic and tactics are the Dark Angels. Dark Angels over the last 10,000 years have been absolutely terrified that people would find out that they have traitors from their legions roaming the galaxy, and will do anything to eliminate them. They've been known with enough reports of traitors to run headfirst into many types of ambushes and traps. But do keep in mind that even for Space Marines, they do punch well above their weight. So often, even if they're trapped, they'll just punch through and kill their aggressors. So make sure if you're trying to trap them, that you have a very tough cage.
The next example being the Thousand Suns. Other than the Grey Knights, there is no Legion that possesses such a strong connection to the warp. This, in many cases, can give them a strong advantage in fights, as it can be very hard to fight someone that can melt you inside of your armor with a flick of their hand. Sadly though, because of their psychic powers, they tend to massively overly rely on them. They are Space Marines, but when it comes to melee combat, they are some of the worst among their brothers. On top of that, there's an entire subsect of people that counter their abilities, that being blanks. Blanks can essentially shut down all magical abilities around them. And even though they are rare, Warhammer takes place in a very big galaxy, meaning that there are an entire armies of these blanks. And as the lore will tell you, as soon as the Sisters of Silence or other blanks show up on the battlefield, the Thousand Suns will immediately fall apart.
For the last example, we have the Salamanders. Even though your average Space Marine could not care less about civilians and the casualties they may take, they have a tendency to protect human lives even risking their own. This can lead to different incidents where Salamanders would die for civilians and other guardsmen, and fall back to protect civilian centers overall, weakening their own lines. Also, similar to the Dark Angels, they can be easily led into traps if you say you have one of the artifacts of Vulcan. When talking about honor involving Space Marines, all of them follow a very specific code. Sadly, it's hard to follow since many of these traditions vary from chapter to chapter, but we do know in most cases of honor gain the best of them. One of the best examples of honor completely ruining a chapter is the Shadow Wolves, a small chapter with no real relevance besides the story. They were so hellbent on keeping their banner standing that each time a Space Marine died holding the banner, one would take his place, to the point where the entire chapter was erased, which is amazing evidence that's beyond logic and beyond reason. Space Marines will die for honor if you give them enough cause. So, overall, in summary, despite being a very effective fighting force, Space Marines can and will have their weaknesses used against them, all the way from their blood to their tactics.